Oh, man, we've been talking a lot about the future of Philadelphia sports, the Philadelphia Phillies, the Philadelphia Flyers, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Philadelphia Eagles. But there is a team in Philadelphia where the future is now. The Philadelphia Union are in first place. Incredible. Brian Wright is here. I'm Adrian Fedke. Union fans, come out of the woodwork. We're covering this team. Doop, doop, doop.
Absolutely. Doop, for sure. We talk about the future of the Philadelphia sports scene being very bright, and that is true. But if you look around the Philly landscape, there's only one team that's currently in first place, and that is your boys in blue and gold, the Philadelphia Union, or as some would like to call them, the Chester Union. But that's okay, as long as you come down and see some of the games.
I'll tell you what, we got 2 live viewers right now. Thumbs up. I was hoping to get 3 views for this show. So we're already surpassing expectations.
I told you people like the Union. They just don't want to admit it in public.
Oh man, it's like liking almost like liking the Philadelphia Passion of the lingerie league. All right, let's talk about standings. We've got 26 points ahead of New York City FC and the New York Red Bulls. Let's talk about this season. What are you seeing from this team? What's the key to the early success you've seen so far?
It's been a really exciting season. As somebody who's watched the team since their inaugural year in 2010, they've been very Philadelphia. We've got a bit of a downtrodden history with certain little bright spots in the Philadelphia sports scene. The Union, since the beginning of the year, have been outstanding with their defense particularly. And you look around the roster this year, they have some very talented players. But the difference overall has been the fact that they now have a bona fide general manager / sporting director calling the shots. And that has led to the acquisition of some very skilled players that they've never had. And it's translating on the field.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the key players on the team this year. We got Chris Pontius leading the team in scoring, 6 goals. Sebastian Letou, 5 assists and 2 goals. Let's start with Pontius. What has he brought to the team?
It's a good place to start because Chris Pontius, a very good young American player. He's really 20, 29 years old. Played a long time for DC United, but he's had injury history. So when the Union traded for him in the offseason, it was a bit of a mixed reaction because he hadn't been able to stay healthy. There was always if he could stay healthy, he could be very good, and he has been in the past, but he hasn't been injured this year, and he's been outstanding out on the wing. He's been able to get down the wing, collect the ball, hold it up, so have guys make runs off him. He's very good at collecting the ball on the outside, cutting to the inside, and taking that shot from the top of the box that bends just enough to stay out of the goalkeeper's reach. He scored twice tonight, actually, in the U.S. Open.
Yeah. Had a brace. How about that?
So Pontius is the classic. When he was acquired, he was the classic high risk, relatively high reward. So far, the high reward has panned out.
Yeah, they beat the New York Red Bulls tonight at home in Chester there. The Red Bulls only 3 points behind in the standings. So to beat that team, they were down at halftime, 1-0.
They were.
They won that game tonight. So pretty good stuff.
And that game was your classic tale of 2 halves because the Union looked like dog shit in the first half. They couldn't complete passes. They weren't getting any kind of chances. The top players, Ilsinho, we always love to have the Brazilian guys on the team, but Ilsinho, Roland Alberg, and Tranquilo Barnetta are your main attacking threats. They weren't getting it done the first half. The second half, things changed. They were pressing. They were able to force some turnovers. Pontius gets 2, and the Union move on to the quarterfinals.
All right, let's talk some differences between the Union and New York City FC, because one of the things that MLS like to do to try to draw some tickets, obviously they like to sign in the older European kind of players. So Andre Pirlo, David Villa are on New York City FC, and we don't really have some of those sexy type of names.
No, we don't. That has been one of the most interesting things about MLS is you have
Black Cat just made an appearance. We're fucked now. Yes. Thanks. We're not going to win MLS.
Good. We have a lot of there are so-called defined almost haves and have-nots within MLS because the salary cap in MLS is weird. The salary cap in MLS is, I think, around $3 to $4 million for the entire team.
Yeah.
And so you have these rules that allow teams to go above the cap and pay more. You know, they call them designated players. Each team can have 3. The Union, I believe, have maybe 1 or 2. They had, but the designated player contract threshold is like $400,000. If it's more than that, they are called DPs. So the Union don't really have too many of those, but you have teams like Seattle, Los Angeles Galaxy, New York Red Bulls, New York City FC that are always signing these big players, and it creates a very, bourgeoisie proletariat type dynamic. So it's good to see some of the smaller market teams having success. The Union are doing well. Sporting Kansas City is a very well-run team. They don't always have a lot of money. Real Salt Lake is a very well-run team. They don't always have a lot of money. Houston Dynamo is this year they're not doing very well, but historically they're a very good team. So it's good to see, the have-nots showing some form, so to speak.
Well, despite not having those, kind of starry old type of European players, the Union lead MLS in scoring.
Yes, something that they haven't had before. This year, offense certainly has not been an issue. Like I've said before, you've got a good bevy of attacking talent. They haven't had a striker for quite a while, but this year you've got CJ Sapong, who is in the running, or many would argue could be in the running for a call up to the U.S. men's national team, and I think he's going to get it based on how they performed in the Copa. Klinsmann there may need to shake things up, so he may see some time. If you drop down a little bit further back into the midfield, that's where the Union's biggest names come in. You've got Tranquillo Barnetta, who is a 30-year-old Swiss international, just missed making the Swiss Euro team. He basically controls the pace of the attack. Like you've got Roland Alberg, who is a Dutch young player. He's 25 years old. The Union were able to woo him because of the fact that they have Ernie Stewart as their GM. Ernie Stewart previously worked for AZ Alkmaar in the Dutch Eredivisie, so they kind of had that Dutch connection, which is why they were able to get him. And you also have Ilsinho, who is a very good, very, very tricky, talented Brazilian player. And you had Vincent Nogueira, who'd been there for a couple of years. He was really the metronome that made the team go. But we'll have to discuss a different topic with him because he actually just recently left the team.
Yeah, that would be another topic. We're going to keep this Union thing going. We're going to talk about them like once a week. We'll see. We'll see how we do with these views.
My hope is that our extended coverage of the team doesn't cause them to start losing.
Well, you just had the black cat.
No, he's good.
I mean, it was only the tail, but still.
That's right. It doesn't affect it if it's just the tail.
All right. Let's talk about Ernie Stewart a little bit then, because you think he's been the key to the success for this year.
I think the whole hiring of Ernie Stewart. So let me go back a little bit. For the entire existence of the Philadelphia Union, the CEO GM has been Nick Sikevich, who is a bona fide soccer guy, but he's more of a business. He's more of a CEO he was more of a CEO than a general manager. So he would always have final say on player signings, but they weren't the right signings. So they actually fired Sikevich at the end of last year and brought in Ernie Stewart. And I think that started the ball rolling in the right direction as far as mentality. I think once he was hired and him and Jim Curtin started working together to bring in these good players, then the whole mentality of the club changed. From the executives down to the players, down to the Sons of Ben and the River End at Talon Energy Stadium, everything started flowing in a positive direction because of Ernie bringing a true GM on board.
Gotcha. All right, let's talk previous game against the Vancouver Whitecaps. Ended a 10-game unbeaten home winning streak. What happened that game? Whitecaps, by the way, 24 points. So I believe they're like third or fourth in the West.
I think they're fourth. But the Whitecaps are no slouches. They're a good team. But the things have been a little different for the Union since Vincent Nogueira left. because typically Corton sends out your standard 4-2-3-1 formation, and he had Vincent Nogueira and the ageless Brian Carroll, who has surpassed 350 appearances in Major League Soccer, which is quite an accomplishment. But he would have the two of them sitting behind your attacking three, so they would sit in front of the back four and sort of get in the way, break things up. Carroll's very good at that, but Vincent Nogueira, his passing was unbelievable from that deep line position. He would be able to find guys making runs, would open up holes, open up defenses, and get the Union chances. Since Nogueira left, which he played in the U.S. Open Cup game, and then the next day he had his contract mutually terminated for personal health issues. I don't know what those are, so I can't speculate, obviously. But since he left, the Unionists have put Barnetta back in his spot and put Roland Alberg into the number 10 central attacking role, and it's worked very well. Alberg has been in and out of the lineup a lot of the season, and since coming into the lineup as a starter, he's scored, I think, 5 goals in his last 3 or 4 games. He's been really good, and he actually just won the MLS Player of the Week. Scored a hat trick against Chicago last week, midweek, and scored a free kick winner in the previous round of the U.S. Open Cup to send them through. So it's been an excellent start for the Union, but defensively things have been a little off ever since Nogueira left. But not a bad performance tonight, only giving up 1 to a talented New York Red Bulls team.
Yeah, let's talk about the U.S. Open a little bit further. This is a tournament that the Union have finished second place the last 2 years. So to the casual fan, what is this tournament?
The best way I could describe the U.S. Open Cup is it is the United States version of the FA Cup. Every team in the United States, from the professional MLS sides to NASL to USL to PDL, all the way down to lower level amateur sides like Lehigh Valley United Sonic and those other smaller teams, everybody's in the tournament. So theoretically, everyone has a chance to win a trophy, although it rarely happens that way. It's been around for 103 years, I think. A few years ago was the 100th anniversary. So it's been around a long time. Back in the day, back when the original Bethlehem Steel FC were trolling around up here, they won 5 of those championships, and it was called the American Challenge Cup. So it's been around, and it has, teams generally put out strong sides. They don't do a ton of rotation because the teams want to win this trophy because it actually comes with a significant financial reward, and it comes with a spot in the group stage of the next season's CONCACAF Champions League.
Oh, there it is. I couldn't have explained it any better. Bam. All right, and another question for the casual fans. We talked a little bit about Pirlo and Villa being on New York City FC. Who are some of the other kind of older kind of players on some of the other teams that people might recognize? So
MLS has been around for a little over 20 years, and a lot of the league, some of the perception of MLS around is that it's a retirement league, that the older European stars go when they're on holiday, so to speak, because they don't want to play in their European league anymore. They come over here to collect a paycheck and have a good time on the field. I don't think that's true. While MLS does have some very good older players, it's a tough physical league that will eat you if you're not fully prepared. But we do have some very good talent. You've got, as you said, you've got Villa and Pirlo and Lampard at New York City FC. New York Red Bulls has Sasha Kljestan, former U.S. international, very good player. LA Galaxy is loaded with talent. They've got former Liverpool captain Steven Gerrard. They've got Robbie Keane, former Tottenham and Liverpool star, currently still plays for the Irish national team. They've got Giovanni Dos Santos, Mexican international. If we go over back to the East in Toronto, you've got Josie Altidore, who's had a bit of a history, a bit of an injury history, but he's a very good U.S. player. You've got Michael Bradley, captain of the U.S. team, for playing in Toronto. You've got Sebastian Giovinco, who was the MLS MVP last season, and he's in his prime. He's only 28 years old, and he left Juventus to come to Toronto. So MLS must be gaining traction among some of these younger star European players. And Tim Howard actually just signed a deal with Colorado Rapids.
Yeah. All right, and let's to kind of end it before we get out of here, kind of differences between, say the Premier League and the MLS. Why is the Premier League so much better?
I think the Premier League's better, because the MLS can't compete with the Premier League in terms of history. So, and over in England, soccer is the sport over in England, so everybody plays it. So you've got these elaborate academy systems that all these Premier League teams have that can generate talent. So that the U.S. will struggle to catch up in that aspect. But on the field, it's just a higher quality. The players are just better. We don't focus on soccer as much as we could because of the way basketball and football pull in the kids. So we're getting there, but the technical ability on the field of the Premier League is just far superior. You watch the Saturday morning Premier League fixtures between like a Chelsea and an Arsenal. No, there's nobody in MLS that came from a U.S. background can usually get up to that level. You've got a couple like Matt Miazga, who started at New York Red Bulls, he's actually over at Chelsea, and he started a few games, but they're few and far between. So just from a talent and technical ability standpoint, England is far superior. But MLS is still it's a good product. It's just not as fluid sometimes as the Premier League is because it's their game.
Yeah, you brought up talent, technical kind of ability. What do you see there that you're not going to see here? And even strategically, what are you going to see there that we just don't have the talent to do here?
I think just the players are smarter. You get some of the runs that some of these forwards make, the free kick prowess, like a guy like Pirlo. You've seen what he can do with the ball, especially from nobody in MLS can really accomplish that. Yeah. If you see the way he hits it with the outside of his foot and it kind of goes like this, the U.S. Residency programs and the U.S. academy programs are getting there, but it's going to be a struggle to catch up with. And you have a lot of foreign players that are coming over to play in the Premier League. So it isn't just the English academy system. It's plenty of other countries that have good soccer pedigrees, because everyone's goal as a young kid, no matter if you play soccer as a youth, you're in Europe or anywhere else, your goal is to make it to the Premier League. Yeah,
because that was kind of my next question before we get out. One more question. Do you see the MLS, not that it's going to surpass Europe, that's never going to happen, but do you see like some U.S.-born players that might actually stay in the States instead of going over to Europe? I mean, obviously, MLS players aren't going to make as much money, but like say for instance, like a Clint Dempsey, say 20 years from now, would Clint Dempsey, would he stay in the U.S. instead of go over?
And that is, that's a really good question. I think if you're a young player, we actually used to have this discussion a lot when we were at TSN. Myself and Mr. Tim Keeble would have this discussion a lot about whether, if you're a young player in the U.S., like say you're Emerson Hyndman, who is an up-and-coming youth player for the U.S. I think he's on the U20 national team. If you're Emerson Hyndman, do you stay in MLS because you want to stay home and you feel like you can develop? Should you go overseas? I think the answer is still definitively you should go overseas because the competition is higher because of what we previously talked about, and you'll challenge yourself more. I think in the long run, Europe is still a better place to develop your talent because the MLS just hasn't caught up to what can be produced in Europe. But you see a lot of these guys these older, like a Dempsey, like a Bradley, these guys that have played a lot of their career in Europe, and then they come back home because they want a bigger payday. That's an interesting dynamic that really we haven't been able to talk about in MLS's history, right? Because Michael Bradley started what happens is these kids start in MLS, they go over to Europe, at least with the guys like Clint Dempsey and Bradley. They start in MLS, they go over to Europe to hone their game, and then they come back. So you've got like a Michael Bradley who started with the New York, New Jersey Red Bulls and then bounced around Europe for a while. He was with Chievo Verona. He was with Roma. He was with, I think, Borussia Mönchengladbach over in Germany. And then when Toronto offered him I think it was like a $6 million annual deal to come back to Toronto, he's going to come home because he'd rather be closer to his family, obviously. So I think the younger generation that's coming up, it's still important for them to go overseas and challenge themselves because you're just not going to get that level of competition here.
Yeah. All right, that's a good answer to that question. But we will see, how the league kind of develops over the next 20 years. Like, because even 20 years ago, there weren't European players coming to the States like the old
10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, you didn't have a ton of American players playing in Europe. Brian McBride played for Fulham for a long time. Clint Dempsey played for Fulham for a long time, and he played for Tottenham for a few years. But when the Sounders came calling, he came back. So I think, for these kids that are young players on the national team, for like a Giassi Zardes or a Darlington Nagbe, or even if a Christian Puselik, who is a local kid from Hershey, plays for he's 17 years old and he's got good first team minutes for Borussia Dortmund, one of the best teams in the world. You're not going to get that. He's not going to get that level of competition in MLS. It's just not the same. So it's better for his development to stay over there and continue to play a much higher quality brand of soccer than would be here. And you have some of the Union players that are going to be, because the goalkeeper, Andre Blake, he's an international player for Jamaica. He's outstanding. But the question then becomes, these young players in MLS, how long can we keep them before the big European teams come calling? Because I still think, if Andre Blake makes an all-star team this year, which it looks like he will, you're going to have him maybe for 1 or 2 more seasons. And then if a Roma or a Gladbach or even like a team in Germany that wants him, or maybe even a team in the English Championship would want him, that's still higher level of competition by most standards. So you might not see Andre Blake in a Union uniform in 3 seasons.
That's an interesting point you make, because that's a lot like the way the EuroLeague works for basketball. You have these teenagers, 18, 19, 20, even 21 years old, and then they come over to the NBA. So
it's almost flipped, right? Because the NBA is widely known as the best basketball league in the world. So you have players like Furkan Korkmaz and Timothé Luwawu Cabarro and Mr. Mustache, Dario Saric, who plays for Anadolu Efes, probably one of the best teams in Europe. I think they lost in the EuroLeague finals this year. But one of the best teams in Europe. But he's coming to, by consensus, the crappiest team in the NBA because it's still a better competition environment for him.
Yeah, so that's like the comparison you can make for the MLS.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right, any final thoughts before we get out?
No, nice to do a Union show. Good victory for the boys tonight. On to the quarterfinals of the U.S. Open Cup, where I believe they'll be playing the New England Revolution July 20th. As far as MLS play goes, the Union will be in Houston on Saturday. So if you've got the Comcast network, you might want to check that game out.
There you go. All right. So, yeah, maybe we can mix in a little Euro and Union talk for Monday or something. So, yeah, we'll figure that out. Maybe we'll do 2 separate shows. We'll see. We'll see how this show does today. Hey, my goal was to get 3 views. So I think we've already accomplished that.
Absolutely.
We're doing well. We're doing well. All right, with that being said, that's Brian Wright. I'm Adrian Fedke. The Union are in first place. I got to get a Union fathead.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I actually have one, but I don't know where it is. Yeah, I had a vision last summer. I was going to, start incorporating all the sports, and I'm starting to get that going. So the Bitter Birds, we're coming, and we're getting a website soon. I can't wait for all that. But, yeah, we're out. Later.
See ya.
Doop, 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 bitches.